when she reached out. Oh, recording in progress. Got it. Okay. For the invite and just to be able to do this, I'm still a newbie artist. I've only been painting really since 2019-ish, 2018. So, but when I was in school, I went to Northern Illinois out in DeKalb. I'm from Chicago, Itasca, lived in Lombard, all of that. So familiar with the Chicagoland area, and my wife's from Aurora. And we met in DeKalb at NIU, and my degree is in engineering, mechanical engineering, and she was an art major. And so we had met, and I wanted to be able to relate to her from the artistic standpoint. So I minored in art and graduated, and then I didn't do anything with art until, I don't know, 5-6 years ago. As I approached retirement, my wife said I should really consider getting a hobby, because I was doing a lot of online gaming, first person online gaming, to where I got carpal tunnel in my thumbs. So I was like, gonna quit that. And I said, well, a hobby like what? And she goes, well, how about art, since you minored in art? And I said, well, okay. I didn't know like which art. So then we're I think at the Dick Blick over by Woodfield, and they had an end cap there set up with Encaustic. And she started to tell me about Encaustic and thought that I might like it just because of the process, what's involved. And she's explaining how you have to fuse it and you could use a blowtorch. And I'm like, yeah, okay, that's sounding pretty cool. So I'm going to check that out. And then really, I just kind of looked at it, and I did for a fundraiser up here in Milwaukee called Art Pop. I did one piece and it was in a silent auction, and then I didn't do anything for a year. Then I did another piece, and people started asking about that one, what gallery I'm in that. And I says, no, I'm just an engineer, you know. And but one thing led to another. So finally in 2018, I was like, well, I suppose as I'm getting close to retirement, I should get serious about art. And so I do business development as well. And so I kind of laid out a whole business plan, how to become an artist and everything. So I took 2018 to look at Encaustic and the different techniques that are involved and try to learn what I can. And I've not done everything you can do with Encaustic. There's so many different options available to you as an artist. But then 2019, that's when I kind of launched, and I did a show in May and did well. And now I'm in 5 galleries and doing enough to where I'm going to work probably for 1 more year, but I could probably retire and just do art full time and everything. But so I have a hobby. I'm no longer a computer gamer. My thumbs are much better, and my wife's much happier about what I'll be doing after retirement. So that's kind of the background there. I'm going to switch cameras here then. And if there are questions, I mean, I've got the speakers on and all that. So if you have questions, feel free to ask. And again, I don't profess to know everything about Encaustic, and I'm still learning, but I just thought I'd give a quick intro and how I would prepare to do a piece, and then try to show some of the different techniques live. It's takes a little time, only because you're dealing with molten wax and different things. So we'll kind of see from a time standpoint. I want to keep it interesting, and watching wax melt is kind of like watching paint dry. So I don't want it to get boring. So
okay, I'm gonna just a reminder to everyone, you are muted, and so if you have a question, just unmute yourself.
Yeah.
Ask the question, and then please mute yourself again so we don't get miscellaneous sounds.
Yeah. So I gotta stand to do this. So if my head blocks the camera, just kind of unmute yourself and say, yo, move your fat head. So but just to get started, a couple books that really, if you're ever interested in Encaustic, one is this one by Danella Wolf. It's called the Encaustic Studio, and she goes through and lays out how to set up a studio space. I have because when you melt the wax, if it smokes, you try to keep it below 200 degrees. If it gets above that, it can smoke, and the fumes can be toxic. So you need ventilation systems typically. I use because I'm an engineer, I kind of rigged a range hood to exhaust out. I'm going to try to pick up my camera here and see if, oh wait, I got the wrong camera. Hold on a second here. Let me go back to this one. I'll kind of show you how I set this up. I didn't practice this, so we'll see if it works. So there's kind of the range hood above my workspace. There's the workspace. There's my range hood that I just got from Home Depot. And then the pallet's actually a pancake griddle. You can kind of see it over here, and you use electric fry pans, things like that. Anything to melt the wax. You can buy heated plates and everything that tend to be a little expensive. So I just went to Kohl's on Black Friday and bought a pancake griddle for $10, and I'm on my second pancake griddle, but that's basically my palette. But she goes through setting up the studio and all the different steps. The other book that's really good is this Art of Encaustic Painting. And it goes through kind of the history and different techniques. And if you're not familiar, Encaustic's been around about 2,000 years. It was with, some of these portraits might be familiar. These are called the portraits. They're the Fayum portraits, or they were done on mummies of Greco-Roman culture around 100 BC. And they unearthed these, and they saw how the pigments and everything were still so clear and the color hadn't faded. And then they realized that everything had been embedded into wax. And then there was a little bit of at the turn of the century by a Spanish artist, Diego Rivera, who kind of looked at encaustic, but then really in the US, it got kickstarted in the 1950s when Jasper Johns kind of rediscovered the medium. And he did a series of American flags. There's one here, it's just called the white flag, but he did some American flags. And that's what really started encaustic again in North America and in the US. So that's a brief history of it. And when I get started, a few things here. So you need to paint when you do your pieces. It has to be on something firm. I use wood cradle boards, Dick Blick. I go to Dick Blick a lot. You can do it canvas, but the canvas needs to be reinforced on the backside, and it's all because it is wax. And so the wax, it's got to be a solid substrate. Otherwise, if it flexes, the wax will obviously break off and can fall off. And then for me, at least, one of the first steps I do, and I'll get my blowtorch here. And one of the things too that's always pointed out is when you set up your studio is to have a fire extinguisher. Very important. So that's part of setting up the studio, because you obviously work with fire, heat. You can use blowtorches, heat guns, whatever. I tend to like to use a blowtorch when I work because I can control it better and do more detailed work. But one of the first things I do on the side, and I'll just show you real quick, is I'll treat the side. It's called Shishugiban, where you just burn the side. And some people will actually do encaustic painting on the side. I just like to burn it. That I'm gonna have to turn on my fan here. Tell me if that's not too loud, is it? The fan? Okay. So I'll just burn the sides. Whoa, there we go. There's your fire, Jeff.
Thank you.
So I'll do that on all the sides. And really what that does is when I put the pieces in frames, I usually use a floater frame. Or you can just have the sides exposed like that with the Shishugiban finish. But if you look at like this piece here, this is an earlier piece where I didn't do that on the side, and you end up with this light kind of area around the piece. And so then on later pieces, when I started to do the Shishugiban, you can see it just is more of a finish kind of look to it when you have it. Some people like the wood exposure on the side. I just happen to like it being dark like that. Some people paint on the sides. I've never done that, but so there's various things that you can do when you're prepping the board to get it ready to paint on. So normally you'll do that first, and then you just take painter's tape and you have to paint the side or cover the sides, because now you're going to start putting the wax on and you don't want it to run over the edge. Or if you want to paint and have it run over the edge, you can do that as well. I mean, there's a lot of different things you can do. So I'll cover all 4 sides with tape. And then after that, the board, you can paint on it without doing any further preparation. If I'm going to do a photo transfer, something like that, I'll do Encaustic Gesso. It looks just like regular gesso, and it is an acrylic binder. They formulated it over the years, but as opposed to normal gesso, it's more porous than just a regular gesso that you might use for other art medium. The Encaustic Gesso, the surface is porous, so the wax can actually go into the gesso. People that have, if you use a non-encaustic gesso, the paint literally, once it's done, the painting, when you pick it up, it could literally slide right off of the gesso if it's not encaustic, because the wax hasn't gone into the porous surface. So you would just paint that on just like normal. And then the next step you do is you apply what's called Encaustic Medium. And it's Encaustic Medium is a mixture of beeswax and damar resin. Just kind of show you this. I just buy it. Some people make their own, but then you have to use cheesecloth to filter out the bits of wood and everything. If you use, there's other resins you can use. Most people use damar resin. I just prefer to buy it because it's easier. I took one class and we made our own resin. So you can melt the beeswax, you can melt the resin. The proportion is typically about 8 parts of beeswax to 2 parts of resin, but other artists will mix different ratios. The more resin, the harder the surface is going to be when it's done. So they'll do different combinations of resin to beeswax, but you need to then put that on first. And a primary reason is in the paint. So these are the paints. Trying to get this so you can see okay. So they come, you can make your own. I prefer not to work with pigments because some pigments are fairly dangerous, to work with. So the paint is the same as the medium in that it's damar resin and beeswax, but then it also has the pigment that's in the paint. And I use RF encaustic paints. There's other makers. They probably have 100 different colors. And when you're melting it on the pancake griddle, you can blend the colors, kind of like with oils and acrylics. I guess I've never painted with oils or acrylics. So I would assume it's something similar. So you can blend them and do different things with the paint. You can add Encaustic Medium to kind of thin it out to get it to flow easier when you paint it on. So that's what the paints look like. And I wanted to just say, so I use a small electric fry pan for my Encaustic Medium, and you'd melt it down. And this is the problem with encaustic is I have to let this stuff melt. So I don't know. Basically, let's see how long this takes. Let me add some heat to it to try to get the wax to melt a little bit quicker here. But as that melts, then we're gonna apply that to the board, and then that's gonna be the first layer, and then we would start to paint on top of that. So, for the sake of just keeping this going, I'm not gonna actually show the medium, but as it melts, it's obviously gonna get liquid. You brush it on, and then you're gonna fuse it to the wood with heat, and it could either be, I do have blow hot air guns like this that you could use. I have, my wife gave me this for Christmas. It's actually like a hot air gun, but it's for crafts. And what I like about it is the air coming through it is really, really low airflow. When you're using a heat gun like this, it tends to blow the wax around a lot. Whereas with this heated craft tool, it just melts the wax and it doesn't really distort if you're painting and fusing the layers. So I kind of like it because of that. And really it depends what you're trying to achieve, what your finished piece is going to be, if it's going to be an abstract piece or a realism piece. That would kind of dictate if you're going to use a blowtorch or a heat gun. So put this away. So I put the medium on the board and I have a board prepped. And I'll show some demo here. So this board has the gesso underneath, and it also has the medium. I don't know if you can see the surface. Everything's kind of glary, isn't it? Well, there's Encaustic Medium on this. So what I wanted to do then with this board is show some of the things that you can do. And also on a smaller scale, this board's also been prepped. And I was going to show you a photo transfer. I'm not sure how you, like with other mediums, how you would do photo transfers, but in Encaustic, basically you want the medium has to be warm in order to do the transfer. So I just need a second to heat the wax up. And while I'm doing this kind of stuff, it'd be a great time to ask questions because it's very boring, again, to watch wax melt. So, but I'm just going to try to do a quick photo transfer on this, and then I'll show you some of the other techniques that you can do with Encaustic. So that, and I know you can't see it, but the wax, the Encaustic Medium is already starting to melt. I just need to get it all up.
What are you looking for in the surface while you're melting it?
Yeah, as it melts, you can see it's liquid, right? When
it's shiny.
It's the areas that aren't melted kind of have a matte finish to them, whereas the melted areas, they're very shiny and clear, and you can tell it's liquid wax. Yeah, it just looks like a white blob, doesn't it? Let me try to turn the light off and see if that might help. Yeah, not really. But you can see it as you're looking at it. You'll see the wax melt and change from being a matte finish to a very shiny finish. So this is almost the whole surface of this right now is pretty molten. So that's good. So I'm going to take the heat away and just let it cool for a little bit. And then when I do the transfer, I just print on a color laser jet. You tend not to use ink jets because in the process, the ink would wash off. And then you just burnish. I have this, it used to be a spoon, and now it's kind of flat because I've burnished so many things. And then you just start, you burnish it for, you just kind of learn with time. I'd say to really make sure it's going to get in there good and that the image is going to transfer into the wax, you probably burnish a good 5 to 10 minutes. I'm going to try to just do it a little bit quicker here. And I don't know that the whole image will transfer, but I have some examples to show you then of what the image looks like. And the other thing, if you ever do photo transfers in the wax or whatever, I did a series of blues guitar players for a blues fest up here, and it reverses the image. So all my right-handed guitar players were suddenly playing the guitars left-handed because you need to reverse the image before you transfer it into the wax, and then it comes out right. So that's just a little tip that I learned from having a bunch of Eric Claptons with playing the guitar with the wrong hand. So anyways, in fact, I've got one of them here. See, so this is Eric Clapton transferred into a little 4x4 square. So that's kind of what they look like when they're successful. So again, normally I would burnish this more. I'm just going to get one other tool. This kind of gives a little more direct pressure to it. Really tends to help get the image into the wax.
I love your orange tool. That looks like it's from a frozen yogurt place.
It is.
Yeah, I've got several of those spoons. I didn't know what to do with them, but I couldn't throw them out.
No, well, and it is. It's. I don't know if you can see, but how flat it is. It used to be like round, so I got to get another one because I've almost worn through the spoon. So, all right. Well, hopefully that'll be enough. But then the next step is you just take water and get the paper wet. And then what I like to do, I found this kind of helps, is I kind of burnish the water into the paper. It seems to find areas where maybe you didn't burnish enough, things like that. I say I'm not sure how good this is going to transfer because I really haven't burnished it very long, but this is the technique, you know, that when you do a photo transfer, an encaustic photo transfer, and on Facebook, there's different groups. There's one for encaustic, and it's just encaustic photo transfers. So it gives you an idea of what you can do. And then after you've gotten the paper burnished, you just keep rubbing it, and then the paper comes off. This is actually working pretty good. So you just keep rubbing and you get the paper all off of there. And I generate a lot of garbage doing encaustic. So if you do photo transfers, you're gonna have a mess. But anyways, so this actually turned out pretty good. Just get a little bit more water on here. And then I get my rag, kind of get rid of the pieces. And you can, when you're doing this, you can feel where the paper's still on the image. So I just keep going over until it feels smooth. It starts to feel like wax, you know, like you can tell, you just kind of from feel, you can feel where the little bit of paper is left or whatever. So so I would do that, you know, much more to make sure there's no paper left on it. And then you have to fuse the image into the wax. So this actually turned out pretty good. So I don't know, I may sell it, you know. I got a Mother's Day show coming up and I got to make a lot of flowers for that. So now with this, with the blowtorch, I wonder if I got something dark. I turned the flame way down. I don't know if you can see it against the air clay. You kind of see the flame coming out. I try to get very little air in with the mixture. And again, the reason being that air is just gonna move the image around. So as I'm doing this, it's the same thing like when I was heating up the medium. I can see the wax get glossy, whereas before I do this, it's like a matte finish. And you just want to lightly fuse that image into the wax. So, and it wasn't always this easy. I used to melt a lot of big holes in pieces of art before I figured out exactly how to use the blowtorch. And I give it a little bit more heat. Because you can kind of see the wax coming through the paper fibers. And that's just the fusing process. So with that, then what I just do is take a little bit more cold water, go over the surface, and the image is now transferred into the wax. And this is like a first technique that a lot of artists that do encaustic, you can do a lot with photo transfers. And then once the image is in the wax, there's a wide variety of things that you can do to it. You could paint over it. You could, it's called incising. You could cut into the wax and fill it with other colors of wax, so on and so forth. One of the things that I like to do, these were some images that I did. This was for, it's called The House on Mangle Street. It was up here in Waukesha, where I do a lot with the art community in Waukesha. It's, they have a book in October that the city reads, and this was the author. And we do an art display at a gallery up here called Almont. And all the artists will do a piece of artwork based on the book. So I did a photo transfer of the author sitting on the porch of the house she grew up in. And then I kind of painted around the edges to give a kind of like she's thinking back and reminiscing. I did another one similar. This is my granddaughter. And she's very tiny. She's how tall is she? 4 feet tall? If that, 3 feet tall. She's very short, but she was looking at a thunderstorm, and I transferred her image. I kind of doubled up the image so it looked blurry to give it some motion. I transferred it into the wax, and then I painted around it to kind of give the feel that she's looking at a storm, and that's what she was doing. So it's swirling around, and I just called that, though she be small, she is fierce. And so there's things that you can do to the image like that. And there's other substrates you could use beyond the cradle boards. One of the things I do is I had these pieces of barn board, and I'll just have an area where I'm going to transfer the image. I'll kind of mark it off and then just go in with a wood chisel and remove the surface and go down. And then once I've done that, I'll tape it off, and then that's where I'll put the encaustic medium and transfer the image into that area. And so when it's done, it's kind of like a frame piece where it's in the barn board. Okay, so pretty much any solid porous surface you could use for encaustic. At around the holidays, I was in a show at Woodstock up at the courthouse gallery there and some other places. And I kept buying all these, and some of this you do because you want to make your booth fee in a show. So I decided to do encaustic ornaments. So I bought these wooden pucks at Michael's and birch and some other woods. Did the same thing, treated them with encaustic gesso, put the encaustic medium over them, and then I transferred cardinals and different birds into them, and I sold them just as encaustic ornaments. And ended up selling like 110 of these things last December. So I was happy because I made my booth fee. But so there's things like that you can do. But again, as long as it's a porous surface, I tend to just use wood in all of my work that the medium can adhere to. You can do that, and then you can transfer an image, or you could paint as well to that. So any questions on the photo transfer part of it? I mean, I don't know what other mediums you do photo transfers, but I think it's kind of similar to other ones. Then with painting itself, so we'll make sure you can see. I turned on my pancake griddle while I was showing you the photo transfers. And there's different techniques you can do. Again, beyond photo transfers, this is a piece I'm working on right now, and I was just going to show you a little bit of encaustic painting. It's I think it's very similar to just painting like with oils, or man, it's really a glare, isn't it? Let's try. Is that better? Yeah. And I'll try that for, oh, it's, well, I apologize. Well, anyways, so I've had the pancake griddle on, and you can see the paints have melted. So like here's just some yellow paint, and basically I can just put it on here and melt it down. Sometimes if you've got a color that you're going to have a large area to paint, you might melt it into a small metal pan like this, and then some artists will just separate their colors into pans, and then they'll just blend them together on the pancake griddle or the heat pad, hot pad to be where they would do their blending. I tend to just melt the wax directly on the pancake griddle, and then when it's done, I'll take just pieces of paper and I'll put them over the paint to blot the paint up. And then you end up with, they call them monotype prints. And I end up with these little monotypes when I'm done doing a painting, and then I've incorporated these into other pieces. So I don't want to necessarily just wipe the paint off and, you know, throw it away. So I realize if I just take pieces of rice paper or whatever, I can do that to blot the paint up, and then you end up with these little pieces like this that you can incorporate, like I say, into other pieces. So when you're painting, when the wax is all melted like this, it's just like painting oils or acrylics. You know, I put it on like this, just paint like normal, I guess. Oh, my head. Sorry, my fat head got in the way. There's one flower up here. I was going to do like a new petal where it kind of goes like this. And I'll add a little dark underneath it. So that would be the start of the petal, and then you have to fuse each layer of paint to the layer of wax beneath it. Okay, so this is where you could use a heat gun, and again, I use a blowtorch because I can turn it way down, and a lot of my pieces, if you saw on my website or whatever, I like to paint detail. So I've got this flame turned down pretty far. And now I'm just going to melt that wax, fuse it in to the layer beneath. And that's it. So that's now been fused into the wax layer beneath. And then what I do is people can use razor blades. There's a scraping tool, pardon my reach there, like this that you can use to scrape the wax layers off. I have these little, I don't even know what they're from, but I've actually worn through some of these and broken them off. But I like them because I can just go in here and then scrape the wax off to give it the shape of the leaf I'm trying to do. Try to get that shape and get as close to it that I can, you know, for the painting, and then just go back with the fire again. And touch up those edges where I scrape with the blade just to get the wax to melt again.
Bob, can you tell us about the encaustic paints themselves? What's the coverage like? Can you paint light over dark?
Yeah, it's they do sell translucent ones, opaque ones. There's a chart with the paints, and it tells you like how opaque they would be if you wanted to paint over another color, things like that. Mm-hmm. You can blend them, you know, like I just use this yellow. I've got this canary yellow and this Indian yellow, but if I took it and blended these two together, I get, you know, kind of like a brownish color like that. So you can blend them like oils, I think, or acrylics. I don't really use the ones that you layer. I go more for the ones that are solid color because I do a lot of flower paintings. And so if I wanted to give it depth, I could put just Encaustic Medium over this. Again, that's the beeswax and the resin without pigment. And I could paint over that and then paint on top, and that starts to give all of these layers. The wildflower painting that we talked about in the interview, that's how I did that one. So the ones that are further back could get covered with medium, Then you paint on top of those layers of wax, do another layer of medium, paint on top, and then you get all of this depth going on in the painting itself.
Yeah, I see.
But yeah, so that's the painting part. It's again, I'm assuming that's fairly similar to if you were going to paint with oils or acrylics. One of the things that is nice is this is already solid again, and I can keep painting. I don't have to wait for the paints to dry, and they're not going to get muddy. If I want to, and I'll just scrape this off, but if I wanted to come over with a color on top of it, I can just do that, fuse that color in, and just keep right on painting. As soon as that wax solidifies, I'm good to go. So it's a lot of hours in a painting, but I don't have a lot of downtime where I'm waiting for the paint to dry. You know, you take the heat away, it solidifies, and boom, you can just keep right on painting. So that's a piece I'm working on now. Another thing that happens, and I really hope this shows up. This is a piece I just finished. It's got a lot, there's a lot of layers of wax in this. And what happens when your painting is done, the Damar resin cures. And it could take up to 3 months before that resin is fully cured. And when it cures, it forms a haze in the painting. And so you have to buff it. You can use either a soft cotton cloth. I actually use some old pieces of nylon. And I got this to show up pretty good before. So like these flowers I just painted a couple days ago. And this is really, when you do encaustic, the first couple times you do this, it's sort of, it's a harrowing experience, because if something gets in there that's sharp, you're going to suddenly scratch up the wax surface and everything. You're like, oh my God. And then you just kind of learn, you can go back in with the blowtorch and get rid of those scratches real light. But you have to get, it's called bloom. And so that resin starts to bloom and gets hazy. And so on this one here, I'm going to try to get it so you can see. Let's see, which way do I need to go? Yeah, there. So you can see how this side is nice and shiny, and this side still has the haze on it. So if I buff that, you can see now how the color has come through. Okay, so you have to do that with these paintings. I don't really sell a painting until it's maybe 2 or 3 months old. You can see the haze down here, right? So if I buff that, now the color's coming through. So that's one of the things with encaustic. The paintings have to cure. And again, it could take up to 3 months. And sometimes initially the haze and the bloom is like super thick. You might paint it and set it aside, and the next day you barely see the colors underneath, depending on how thick it is. So you just got to buff it. And then little by little, that bloom kind of starts to disappear. And then you finally end up with, you know, the final buffing, and then the painting, it almost looks like painted tile or something, you know, because it's got that finish to it. It's not, you can tell it's not oil painting or acrylic. It almost looks like tile. A lot of times when people see my work, they think I painted on tiles, and it's like a glaze that goes on the tile. But that's just the Damar resin that's curing up. And so since I just finished this piece, it'll go in a gallery up in Door County, but it won't be up there for at least 2 months, because it's going to take that long for the resin to cure. So so that's photo transfers. That's how you do painting, how you got to finish the paintings off, how you prep them. The other thing I wanted to try to do was show some of the techniques that you can do. We'll get a couple other tools here. Okay, so it's kind of interesting when you work with wax. This is just a trowel I use when I do tile work, and this is the mastic that holds the tile down. But one of the things, some of the different techniques, one is called incising, and I got to get the wax warm again. So let's do that. Just need to heat it up because I put the medium on here earlier today, and I wanted to just try to quick do part of a painting. I'm going to put some orange on there. I've got some Encaustic Medium here that I'll just add to it, and that kind of will help it spread more when I paint. Let's get that all melted up here. Again, you keep this palette, the pancake griddle, around 200 degrees is a good temperature. That's the wax will melt and not burn or smoke. Now that that's all getting melted, just kind of paint on some orange here. It'll do like some Chicago Bear colors or something. I don't know. And then of course we got to fuse that in. We'll take our blowtorch again. And melt that wax down in there. Okay, so that's fused to the layer beneath. And then there's different things you can do while the wax is warm. I could cut into it with my trowel. You could take other tools and do a line like that or whatever. Man, I need more space here. So, and then we'll let that cool up a little bit because I'm going to lay another color in there and show you what incising is. In the meantime, while that's cooling off, I'll heat up this side. And one of the things you can do is burnish images into the wax. I'm a little limited right now because it's winter, but during the summer, I like to do this with Ginkgo leaves. What you can do is take some leaf. This is just copper leaf. You could use gold, copper, silver, whatever. Kind of put this on the wax. Kind of get it to fuse in there a little bit and heat up the wax underneath. And then I clipped this leaf off of a house plant. I like it because it's got some veining in it. So I'm hoping this will turn out okay. And I just put that into the hot wax, cover with a piece of wax paper, and then burnish that into the wax. So basically it's transferring the veining of the leaves into the wax right now. And then I'm going to just paint around that. I don't know, maybe some purple or something here. Again, I always like to add some Encaustic Medium just to help the flow of the paint. You can use an easy way to clean your brush is just to take an area of the pancake griddle and kind of get the color out. You can use a soy wax to clean the brushes, but the soy wax can't mix with the other elements because it'll actually lift the paint up. So it's if I clean with soy wax, I do it as a whole separate thing. Let me get some more purple in there. So now I'm just painting around the edge of the leaf here. Maybe some, let me get some blue here, something a little bit lighter. And another shade of purple. Got to fuse that. Again, it's just the fusing is just getting that wax to melt so it bonds to the layer beneath, and then I can hopefully peel this off. And if I had more of the you know, the copper, then it would have had the whole transfer. But you can kind of see the, well, that's really bright in it. But the veining of the leaf is in the wax. So then I could go in there and kind of touch it up, kind of paint around the edge of the leaf, things like that. And I've got some photos that I'll show you of other pieces where, you know, there was more time to actually do this in more detail and have more of the leaf and whatnot that's in there, so you can see the veining in that. So we'll use that. We'll just lightly fuse it, and then so that's one of the things you can do. And then over here where and this is nice and cool now, so I could fill those areas that I cut out. Again, this technique is called incising. I'm just going to fill that with a different color wax. That, and then what did I do with my tool? My scraper. Uh-oh. Oh, here we go. And then you can scrape off. See that.
Could you show it closer to the camera when you're finished?
Yeah, I will. So there's so that technique is called incising, where you can cut into the wax and then layer in other colors. And of course, you always got to fuse each layer. So. Let's do a little bit of incising on this squiggle line I made over here. Thank you.
I have to ask another question, Bob.
Yeah, no problem. Go ahead.
Are you going from anything in particular, or is this off the top of your head?
Just top of my head, just trying different things here. So, so again, you can incise, you can do that. You can take templates like, I'm getting to what Jeff really wanted. You could like just using a circle template, you know, like you would for drawing, and I'll bring this closer so you can see it now. So there you can kind of see the veins of the leaf in the wax, the incised areas. You can just take a template like this and, you know, cut in a series of circles into the wax. Same idea. You're just with incising. You could make a pattern if you wanted, and then just cut that pattern into the wax. Do a light color to fill that. I didn't cut these real deep, but so I'm hoping the wax stays in there, but we'll find out. You'd have something like that. And if you just kind of look, you know, Google Encaustic paintings, you'll see all of these techniques incorporated into big comprehensive pieces. But so that's incising. Another thing you can do is what's called a shellac burn. So these are just Pearl X pigments. I don't know if you're familiar with them. You can also, where's my, I just use little eyeshadow applicators for this, but I'm sure there's a tool you could buy that costs hundreds of dollars or something, but I just go to the dollar store and I buy a pack of these eyeshadow applicators for $1. You could take the powdered pigments over a, oh, I got to heat the wax up first, sorry. So you could put the powdered pigments in with a pattern like this into the wax, you know, if you wanted to, kind of like that, and then fuse that. And then what you can also do is it's called a shellac burn. Hey, Lord, on my workbench is a can of shellac. I meant to show.
What is that powdered pigment called?
Yeah, Pearl X is the brand that I use.
Pearlex.
Yeah, Pearl X. And again, you gotta, whoop, I fused it a little too much. My flame was too high, so you saw how it quick distorted that.
Oh,
See it distorted, because my flame, I had it turned down, but when I turned it upside down, extra air went in and it quick blew the wax. That's why I use really, really low flame when I work. So which shellac burns, it's just normal shellac like you get from a paint store. And I've got some I poured out here. And into the shellac, you can add the powdered pigment right into the shellac. There we go. That should be good. And they make, I don't know if you're familiar, but they make just a ton of different colors of these pigments. I got a whole nother drawer that's just different shades of gold and copper and different things. So you've got, sorry. So I've got my shellac and I've got my powdered pigment in here, and I'm just going to mix that up.
Is the shellac a finishing surface or is this part of the artwork?
Yeah, this is another technique
Okay.
that you could do. And again, I'll show you some pieces where there's a whole series of these shellac burns. This is just to give you an overview of, you know, you can paint, you can do incising, you can embed objects into it. You can add different gold, copper, different leaf into it. You can take patterns and burnish in shellac or powdered pigments. When you do this now, you brush on the shellac here with the pigments in it. Just kind of do an area here. And now it gets kind of interesting because you're never quite sure how it's going to turn out, right? So, but basically, like let me try this. See if you can see the fire.
Isn't
Turn off
shellac,
auto light.
isn't shellac flammable?
It is. So I think that's what Jeff wanted to see. So there's, so the shellac is burning off. I'll turn the lights back on here.
Thank you.
You got it, man. And normally then it leaves a pattern in the wax. I just got to touch up a few spots here because I can tell that the shellac didn't fully burn. Just want to hit this real light. I'm just trying to make sure that the shellac is fully burned off. Okay. And then this, so that's the pattern that results in the wax. So that the shellac burned away and that powdered pigment that I put in there, that's left in the wax. And then this is where you can go in and manipulate it with your blowtorch to try to get it to, you know, maybe do different things. I'll try to add a little bit more in one area here. When it's cooled, you can then actually take those powdered pigments and burnish them in. I don't know if this will cool enough to be able to do that. Let me light that one on fire. So I put a lot of shellac here, so this will burn for a little bit, but it's still burning. And this is when my wife explained to me about encaustic. It's like, yeah, this sounds pretty cool. If I'm going to do art and I can start things on fire, why not? So,
Do you have your exhaust fan going?
yeah, it is. Yep. Yeah, normally I would do this outside, but I thought, what the heck? No. So this, because that was so thick, the wax is still melted. Hold on. There, now it stopped. So you can see where that second shellac burn was, like the layer it added, right? And then, yeah, I'm not going to be able to do this, but I could take another colored pigment and put it on the applicator and then burnish it in. So if I took like the orange color and burnish it in and then lightly fused, you'd have that orange down into the wax, but then you'd have that purple pattern kind of on top of it. But I don't think this is going to let me do it. It's still a little tacky. And if I tried to do it, the shellac would probably just kind of ball up it and become a mess. So, but I've got some pieces that I can show you what that's going to look like. So, so those are a lot of the techniques that you can do, you know, just beyond regular painting or photo transfers. And any of these techniques, you could do the photo transfer and then do some of these techniques on top of the photo transfer. A lot of artists, you know, they might do something like this and then in this area actually do a photo transfer to add some element to it. So I just wanted to give you an overview of some of the different things you can do. And then I'm going to switch here and actually pull up and show you some pieces where there's a little bit more time because it's already after 8 o'clock. So I'm going to switch to my computer here and hopefully this will work. We didn't practice this, Jeff, but I'm assuming this is going to work. So I'll go back to this, my normal camera, and then share the screen.
Yeah, we did try this and it does work.
So can you see like a whole bunch of little paintings?
Not yet. There you go.
Okay. So I'm just going to pull up a few here that show those techniques in a little bit more detail. So I did a series of paintings that were nebula, different nebula. There's a crab nebula. This is called the Eye of God or the Eye of Creation nebula. And these are all of this orange and copper color. Those are all shellac burns. So I added, the copper pigments or the red pigments into the shellac, lit them on fire, went back in with the blowtorch to manipulate it to kind of get it to look like I wanted. The blue area or the iris, the Eye of God nebula, this is all encaustic paint in here in the middle. And then it kind of transitions from a painting to shellac burns with powdered pigments on the edges. So really the blue area was painting, the black is all painting, but everything else is a whole series of shellac burns and also taking those pigments and then burnishing those into the wax.
Bob, is it possible for you to click on that so we can see it larger? To select it?
There, I don't know. That's as big as my screen is. Does that
Just
help? Or?
double
Double-click
click
on
on one of them.
Yeah.
You wanted to see one of them in particular?
Yeah, the eye of creation nebula is really, really tiny for us to see right now. So if you clicked on it, I think it would take that whole screen, but maybe not.
Yeah, try double clicking on
Is
it.
there a way that I can hide the panel on it? Oh wait. Okay, that got rid of that. Well, yeah, it just does that. I mean, it made it large, right? But you can't see.
No.
Double click on it.
Okay, I'm not following. Let me try this. Is that better or no?
No, all it looks like is you have the cursor on that particular picture, but it's just the cursor is just sitting there pointing at the eye.
Oh. I apologize. Let me try this again here. Screen. Is that better?
Yes,
There you go.
perfect.
That's it.
Okay. Now I've got something here about who can share. Here.
Oh no, it disappeared.
There we go.
That is really spectacular.
So it's still there. Okay, good. So it's still there.
That's wow. Wow.
Good. I'm glad you can see. So again, the blue area is encaustic paint, and all of this other copper, yellow, there's purples in there. That's all shellac burns and powdered pigments. So let me try another one. Oh, good. Maybe I can just do this.
Yeah.
You see that? So that's a series of, you can also print, to do a photo transfer, you can print on rice paper. And then when you lay that into the wax and cover it with encaustic medium, the paper kind of disappears. So it just leaves the image. This was for a show I think the name of the show was called like Replication. So they wanted pieces where you were repeating an image. So there's all these dragonflies in here. And that's what that was. But that's another way you could do the transfers, is actually print on to rice paper, put it in, and then the paper disappears. So this is another nebula. This is the Crab Nebula. Similar, where it's painted in a whole series of shellac burns with coppers and greens and blues. I really like doing the Nebula. So someday I hope to have a Nebula show. but I'm gonna try to close this and see what other paint.
It's
Hopefully they'll.
beautiful.
Oh shoot! I didn't want to do that. Stop sharing. The window's closed. Let's go back to that. I wanted to show you one other technique here. It's called accretion. Come on. And that's where you, and tell me if you can see this image when it pops up here. Is that big?
No, it's little.
That's the, yeah.
I don't know how to make
It's the
this.
thumbnails right now.
It is, okay. Shoot, I'm sorry.
How about just open? Can't you just put,
Yeah, that's what I tried to, I'm clicking on the thumbnail and on my screen, they're large, but
oh,
let me see, you know what I think I did? I think I opened it and then I shared the large image. That's what I did. Okay, now it's big, right?
yes.
There you
Yeah,
go.
okay, now I understand what I'm doing. So one of the techniques I didn't show you, it's called accretion. And that's where you apply the wax a little colder and you brush. I started this one with dark blue and then went to lighter blues and eventually the white color. And let me get to the piece. I don't know where, oh, here's the frame I built for it. Well, I shouldn't have done that. I'm sorry. Oh, there it is. So these are three pieces of triptych called 321 Blue, where these are all accretion. And when you look at the individual panels, they look like that. So it's this buildup of wax. And you keep building them up with progressively lighter colors. And let me just kind of I'll come back to that one. That's a good one for shellac burns. So this is like a closer up view of that accretion, what the surface looks like. And I think I've got, yeah, this is a shot from the side. So as that wax builds up, it leaves all of these channels and everything. And there's some artists, they just do accretion pieces and they figured out how to manipulate the buildup of the wax so it looks like flowers and different things. This was just my first attempt at it. So, but that's another technique called accretion. And again, you do that, the wax is a little cooler. And when you're fusing it, you don't fuse the last couple layers because you don't want that wax to melt and then you lose all that texture. So it's a little different than the other techniques are in that, you know, the last one or two coats are not fused. And then this is one I'll just show you. It's a shellac burn. It's actually got a best in show for an abstract. Tell me is it zooming in?
Not yet. Now it is.
It did. Okay, good. So you can see the gold is a shellac burn. So I would have added gold pigments into the shellac, light it on fire, go back, hit it to get the kind of the patterns I wanted. And then all of these other colors, the red is paint underneath, but like these brighter greens, those are all pigments that I then burnished into the wax after I did the shellac burn. And then I fuse those in. And so that's where I was saying, like with the one I just did, if I picked another color pigment and I burnished it in, like up here in this yellow area, you end up with this pattern of the shellac burn, but then all this other color that's going on as well. So that was a piece called Shoreline. It was a shore, my interpretation of a shore.
How thick does this surface get?
Not very. I mean, I'm gonna guess max like a 1/16 of an inch or so. It's not super thick, you know, maybe even though there could be like for a detailed painting, there could be a lot of layers. It's not, again, the final product is not very thick and they're not, you know, it's not like you have to worry about the weight or anything of them.
Can you build it up with a palette knife?
You could, yep. You could use a palette knife. Some people use palette knives with the wax. I'm just trying to find another one to share here. I'll do the same thing. Oh, I don't know. What I'm not sure what to show here. Oh yeah, I'll just show a couple more here, and then if there's any questions, I need to go to the share screen. Now I need to stop and go to the big one. Oh, shoot, it didn't work. I did something wrong. I'm sorry. I think I totally closed my screen. Oh, shoot. How do I make this smaller? Oh, oh, here we go. I'm sorry, my computer is really like slowing down right now. I'm going to try to show this piece and then. Okay, share screen.
Ooh,
Yeah, so this one was for a show where they wanted you to depict riches. And so I went with, this was called Opulence, and I was trying to capture Egypt, ancient Egypt. So this is all gold leaf up in here. And this area in the middle where it's kind of got that orange kind of tint to it. What I did there, I don't know if you can see like these white lines in here. I actually took a piece of this gold mesh paper and fused that into the Encaustic Medium. And then when I painted over it, this paper comes through. And then some areas, when I hit it with the blowtorch, like up in here, the paper actually caught fire and beat it up. So then I went back and added orange and gold pigments in here. That was one of those unexpected, happy accidents or whatever Bob Ross calls them. When the paper caught fire, it beat it up like this. So I did that on a couple other pieces. But that's when it just shows you how you can add some texture underneath with papers that allow the wax, the encaustic medium, to come through the paper, and then you can paint on top of that. So I don't know. I guess is that good? You want to see more?
No, that was great.
Okay.
Now is what we're looking at all opaque, or is there some translucence to it?
It's basically opaque, except when I do the and the pieces I have are so large I couldn't show it. They have some opaqueness or translucency because when I may have the image painted, and then over that I'll paint encaustic medium, which is kind of clear or hazy, and then I can paint on top of the medium again. So you get these different layers, and part of it looks opaque and part of it looks translucent, just because you can see the multiple layers of wax.
Well, that would make the image quite interesting to look at then, because you'd see a variety of translucence.
Right. Yeah, you can. I was going to see if there was one here. Oh man, these thumbnails are really small.
Well, you're getting old.
That's a true statement.
You're not the only retired engineer doing this stuff.
Let me see if I can quick find. I think they're under this folder. There's one that if it shows up good in here. Let me see if it's, yeah, this one here. I think kind of do that. Now I got to get back to this and then share it. I got this figured out. It ain't so bad. So I think this one might kind of show a little bit of the layers. So you can kind of see it on this. This was a photo transfer on top of another photo transfer. So you see this light, this like faded area back here. That's the photo transfer. Then I did another layer of Encaustic Medium. And then this darker photo transfer was done on top of that. And then I went in and I manipulated the image while the wax was hot and did some painting. But you can kind of see the layer. So even though these are opaque, when you see this in person, you can definitely tell that there's depth to it, that this layer here, this lighter layer, is beneath the top layer. So, you know, even though it's I guess that's just one of the ways that you can get it. So it's not a translucent piece per se, but by how you manipulate the encaustic medium and the images. And you could do this with painting as well. You could paint a layer, do the medium and paint on top of it. And you get this same effect where it gets all of this depth that's going on. So.
Is the frame encaustic as well?
Is what now?
The frame that was around that was encaustic as well?
That was just copper leaf that I put around the painting. And then normally I just use floater frames. So, you know, like this one, it's just a floater frame that I'll put it into. That I buy at Blick. So, but the last one I just showed you, it was actually copper leaf. I don't think, yeah, I closed the image out, but that was just copper. I just went with that around the edge of it. So, but well, I think I hit everything. I hope it was enjoyable. I mean, I wanted to give you an idea of like some of the techniques that you can incorporate. You know, to do a painting, I go anywhere from 4 by 4 inches up to 18 by 24. A little 4 by 4 photo transfer like this, I could do some extra work on it, and basically it's done. You know, it takes 20 minutes. When I'm working on a large piece, I probably have 40 or 50 hours of actual painting time in it. Again, once the wax cools, I can just keep painting. I don't have to wait. So 50 hours of painting might take 4 or 5 days to do. You know, 5, 6, 7, 8 hours a day. So, but any other?
I have another question for you.
Yep.
What I'm seeing is an extraordinary variety of textures that you're able to create. Are these common textures, or do they just kind of happen?
No, they're I guess they're common. They're techniques that you can use. For example, when I showed you the accretion surfaces, that blue piece with all the texture and accretion, that's like if you go into that book that I showed you about encaustic art, like the art of encaustic painting, there's a whole section in here just on accretion and what those, like, here's, I don't know how this will show up, but not very good. But you can kind of see the accretion piece there.
Mhm.
Yeah.
They actually go through the technique of how you would create a surface with accretion. Same with those shellac burns. When you're building those up and painting over them, there's a section that just, and that's what I did for like a year, was like, okay, this month I'm going to mess around with shellac burns. One of the things I did, and I do want to open this one and show you real quick, was with accretion, I created this piece and I really liked how it turned out. And I've done a couple like this now. I'm going to just share this quick. The original one was 4 12 by 12 panels, and then I built a custom frame for it. But this was the 4 seasons, what spring, summer, fall, and winter. And all of these are different accretion techniques. So when you look at the paintings, there's all sorts of texture going on here. Like on the winter piece, the top layers of frost versus up here, the summer In fact, actually sell the summer as a screensaver. I've sold that image, but these are all accretion. So when you see these, this is applying that wax when it's colder, right? So I looked at that accretion technique. This is the same technique that that blue piece was, the 321 blue, where it looked more like a popcorn kind of finish. This is that same technique, but it results in a different look to it. But it's the same idea where you're applying colder wax and building up those layers, and then you don't fuse the last 1 or 2 layers. So that's another accretion. The incising, you know, these are all, again, techniques that that they're purposeful. And as you do them and you're taking your blowtorch or heat gun or whatever, you can kind of go in and manipulate them and sort of create it. And I think that's one of the things I really like about Encaustic is you start out studying a certain technique, and then as it kind of morphs into this, you go down this path and you end up with pieces that, even though it's the same technique, it looks totally different, you know. So I have 3 or 4 different ways that I do accretion now. Even burnishing images into the wax. I said I love to do Ginkgo Leaves. I've sold several pieces where I put Ginkgo Leaves into the wax with gold and whatnot, and then peel the leaf off after I paint over them. And people really like to see the veins of the leaf in the wax. They'll just look at that up close, and it's like, how do you do that? And it's just kind of cool, all the different things. And there's other techniques. If you just Google or watch YouTube videos, RF has a lot of videos on different encaustic techniques. You could watch those for days and still not exhaust all the different things you can do with it, you know, just beyond, you know, the normal thing would just be to paint, but because there's all these other things you can do with the layers of wax and transfer images and cut back into, you could paint layers of wax, and then using that scraping tool I showed you, you can purposefully layer the wax in different colors and different thicknesses, and then go back and scrape off the layers to almost like reveal a painting underneath what you did. But you can kind of plan that out, you know, and it's the same scraping that I did for the incising and that, but I've not tried that. I think you got to do a lot of planning to figure out what your final image is going to look like, and then start to layer all of those different colors and then start to scrape off and then add more layers and scrape those off. But it's a pretty interesting medium, and when I retire, I'll very much stay busy doing this for a long time. So, because there's a lot of things I haven't even touched the surface on as far as techniques go. So,
So you're
Any
not
other
going to go back to the gaming, huh?
no. I tried once. I said, I'm going to play for an hour, and suddenly that morphed into 3 hours, and my thumb started hurting. And I said, that's it. I got it off my system. I closed out my online account, and no more gaming ever. So,
Well, Bob, I am thrilled to have seen what you do, and I am so happy too that you have found something to fill your life. And the art that's coming out of it is amazing. It's
Well,
going to thrill many, many people to come for years.
well, thank you very much. And I do, if everything I do is under Ways of Wax, I think that was conveyed somehow to you guys as a group. So my Facebook page is Ways of Wax, my Instagram, my website is waysofwax.com. And in there, I've got, you could go through and look at other paintings and things. It's got the links to the galleries and different shows. I've got my CV in there about the last 2.5, 3 years, all the different, oh yeah, I guess a little over 2 years now. Different shows and things that I've gotten involved with. So it's been really rewarding. I appreciate that. And I like, with Ways of Wax, my artist statement is that when people see my art, they go, wow. It's simple.
Yes.
So when I posting on some of the, like this one painting, that one I showed you with the flowers that I just finished, I posted that on some closed groups of just encaustic artists on Facebook. just to kind of get feedback on it, you know, and see what people think. And you get, if people are clicking wow, then I feel like I've done my job. So
Very
if their
rewarding.
comment is wow, then I'm like, good. That's what I want is wow. So but it's that simple.
But you get a big wow from me.
Well, thank you.
Bob, I think those Nova that you did are just spectacular. Brings me back to Star Trek. You know, you could do art for fantasy. I think it's just absolutely wonderful.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, my son gave me a whole book of Nebula for Christmas because I just have, I think like 3 or 4 of them, and but there's so many, and they're so cool. So I'd like to have about 20 or 30 and then do a show just with nebulas.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
beautiful.
So, but yeah, thank you.
Terrific.
Well, I suggest people go to his website and check out because he's got even more stuff there. So, I mean, we just saw some of the stuff in the thumbnails, but the website is really nice.
Yeah.
And he's made room for his wife to join him there too. So,
Yep.
who's also an artist.
So I'm that's my online. She's my first artist I'm representing online, but I don't charge her a commission yet. But you know, if she starts selling artwork, I may have to revisit that policy. So.
Yeah, and you value your life very cheaply.
Yeah,
Yeah, right.
trust me, it'll always be for me.
Bob, have you sold any of the Nebula paintings you've done?
I've not. I've listed. I kind of, you know, sometimes you price things where you put a price on them, and if somebody really wants to buy them, great, I'll do another one. But whenever I put those into shows, I've overpriced them on purpose, just because I want to have a show of Nebula.
Right.
So
That's what I was getting to.
yeah, so I've not sold them, but it's kind of been on purpose that way, you know.
Mhm.
Bob, I would think that pricing of your work may be difficult because it seems like a lot of them, there's so much effort and so much time that goes into one piece that you can't charge by the hour. We know that as artists, we can't charge by the hour, but
Yeah.
it must be difficult sometimes.
It is, and honestly, and now having like sold pieces and whatnot, so I do, you know, those, when I'm in a show, I do those ornaments. I actually do encaustic jewelry where I didn't show you this, but some of it's on the website, but I just take small pieces of wood and I put encaustic medium on them, and I do the exact same kind of painting that I would on an 18 by 24. It could be a photo transfer, whatever. So it's a small piece of encaustic art. Then I put it into I glue it into a bezel, and I put a 2-part resin mixture. This is for an earring, and
Wow.
and I sell that. And again, I did that to cover my booth fee.
Yeah.
And then like around Mother's Day, I sell more darn jewelry than like anything. It's kind of crazy how much jewelry I sell. It's relatively easy to do, you know.
Mm.
But so those
Gotta
I just
feed the artist.
yes, those I just have a $40 for a pendant, 25 for earrings, and they sell like
That's very reasonable. Yeah.
yeah, people, yeah, some have said I should raise my price a little bit. And then like a small, and it depends which gallery I'm in and what location, but something, a little photo transfer like this that I did literally in a few minutes. If I do anything else, I don't know. This might only be $25, $30, something like that. For a larger painting, like up in Door County, when I got in a gallery up there, they take a 50% commission.
Wow, that's big.
Yeah, so I had paintings that I wanted, that I kind of look at them, and you're right, it can't be how many hours you spend. So I look at it, it's like, if I get $600 for that painting, I'd be happy. And then I got in up in Door County, it's like, well, I want 600, so it's got to be 1,200. And I did, and then I sell like 3 paintings, and I bump one up to 1,500, and that sells. And now I got one reframed, and I got to cover the framing costs. And my wife is like, well, you need like 2,200 for that. And I'm like, yeah, okay, I'll put 22. This one that I just did, this is when this goes up to Door County. I mean, that'll probably be like, I don't know, $1,700-$1,800.
It's
But then,
beautiful.
then these little, photo transfer things and stuff like that are smaller pieces. I'll show you this. So this was a red hibiscus painting I did. That's a commission piece.
Mhm.
And so this is 9x12. So that's like $250 to $300. That's probably more where I sell a lot of art in that range. But again, it's kind of like when I know kind of how much effort it takes. So I'm like, well, if I'm going to do a commission 9x12, I kind of know it's going to take me 15 hours of painting or 2 weeks of time or something like that. So I'll just tell them $300, $400. And I did, after my experience with Door County, though, I did raise all my prices because it's like if someone's willing to spend $1,500 on it, I'm like, who knew,
Good for you. Good for
Someone
you.
wants to spend that much. Well, that $400 painting is now $650, and then that one sells, and it's like, oh my God, what's going on here? But anyway, yeah, if anyone can figure
Good
out,
for you.
item,
Good
But-
for you.
but yeah. So, anyways,
It's good stuff.
Very exciting.
thank you.
Very.
I hope it was interesting enough. I apologize with some of the lighting and trying to share some of the images there where I had issues, but hopefully it gave you a good feel for what it's involved, how it came about. I'm in a group in Chicago called Fused. It's one of the larger encaustic groups in the Midwest. There's probably 40, 45 encaustic artists, and that's kind of how I got started. I went to a class down there and met some of the big names in encaustic art, and it's been rewarding just being associated with them and bouncing ideas off different artists and getting feedback. And my wife's an artist, obviously, and an art teacher. So I take a lot of paintings to her and say, critique it, what's good, what's bad. And it's always, you need more contrast, you need this. And I just go back and rework them. So when I post to the groups online, it's like, I want feedback, not just don't tell me it's nice. If there's something
Right.
you change, tell me. You're not going to offend me. I just want to get better. So in
That's
the end,
right.
it's all good.
That's
So,
a good
Thanks for
approach.
sharing.
I've always been interested in encaustic painting since high school. We did paintings with melted crayons.
yeah.
So then I didn't, and thank you for this wonderful demonstration, because I really never knew what the difference was between
Well-
what I had done in high school and what encaustic.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting when people come up and you tell them you're painting with wax and whatnot, and they go, oh, like crayons? And you're like, no, kind of like crayons, but not really, so I like to bring paint with me to shows and whatnot to show them what the paint is like and how you go about the process. But yeah, but having said that, you could use crayons in your encaustic art too. As long as
You
it
could.
melts and resolidifies it would work.
Yeah.
So,
Well, in college, I used to do paintings with crayons and turpentine.
okay. Yeah. Yep. And I should say there's something called cold wax. Encaustic is from the Greek encaustikos, and it's talking about using heat to fuse layers. That's encaustic. There's something called cold wax out there as well, and that's got turpentine and other things in your painting with oils, and you'd never like fuse that with a blowtorch, because byproducts of some of that with the pigments and turpentine is actually could be mustard gas. So when people are doing cold wax, you wouldn't fuse. You could use cold wax in an encaustic painting, and then if I wanted to use like a oil stick or something like that to put oil when I'm incising, and I want to fill that with color, if I don't want to use encaustic paint, I could use the oil sticks, the pastel oil sticks and things like that. But then you have to just wipe that off. There's a special thing. I've not done it, but there's a special liquid you use to wipe that off. But then you can't fuse it anymore, because if that heats up, it could create mustard gas. So
Ooh,
Great.
You tend to steer clear of that, you know, so. But if you're doing cold wax and you want to hit it with some heat, don't. Could be bad. So, but
Well, thank you so
Okay.
much.
thanks for
Thank you.
sharing.
Yeah, it's been
Well,
great.
thank you
I
again.
gotta admit, I expected a little bit more fireworks, you know, a little more pyrotechnics, but
Well,
you did do some for me, so I'm happy.
turn the lights off to try to get the full effect of the flame, you know, so hopefully that.
I think
Wait.
Jeff is gonna be going out and buying him help some of those tools.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the shellac, literally, I go to Home Depot to buy the shellac. You don't have to buy, you know, I'm sure they make something in an art supply store that costs 20
More.
times more than a little
Right,
can does at
right.
Home Depot.
And it's
but
probably the same thing.
it probably is, yep. So,
So when
Yeah.
this is all finished, like that, the one that you were showing us that you were burnishing, is that a fairly stiff finish? So in other words, you can't scratch it later on?
it would, you could scratch it. At the end of the day, it's wax, even though the resin
Okay,
is in there and it
So it's more
hardens it.
wax than resin. So the resin doesn't give it as much strength as fully resin.
And that right. So if and really the rules for encaustic are like any art. You don't hang art in sunlight. You know,
Right.
if you typically don't put, if you frame encaustic, you don't put it under glass, because if somehow it got in sunlight under glass, it melts at around 180 degrees or so.
Oh, dear.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it could, you don't hang it under a heat vent, but you wouldn't do that with any piece of art, you know, and that's what I tell people
Hopefully.
when they buy it. It's like, don't hang it in the sunlight. You wouldn't want your art to fade. Well, you don't want it to melt, you know. And I tell them, and if it does melt and it's over 160 degrees in your apartment or house, you probably have other issues than your encaustic painting melting.
Get homeowners
Um,
insurance.
Yeah, but it could scratch, and I've had people where I could go back and touch it up. You know, I wouldn't expect them to take a blowtorch and do something, but I had a piece in a show and it got damaged. So I just took it and I reworked the wax and I hit it with the blowtorch. I buffed it, and then at the end of the show, I had to go back and buff it more because the resin hadn't fully cured where I did the touch-ups. In fact, I'm gonna get a piece for you real quick. Here. This is the piece right here. It's moonlight. It's all black and everything. And a corner had chipped off of it when it fell. And so I had to go in and I just did a buffing on this piece, but this kind of shows you what the surface looks like. How people think sometimes it might be tile.
Mhm.
This was one that actually got damaged and scratched up, and I had to go back and hit the whole surface with fire and fix it up. But it's at a point now. I just did a buffing 2 days ago, and it hasn't really hazed up too much. So I'll probably give it one more buffing, reframe it, and then put it back. There's a gallery that has my other black and white pieces in Waukesha, and he wanted that piece once I got it repaired. So, but at the end of the day, it's wax. So if some little kid went up with a key and scratched it, but
Yikes.
you know, but if they did that on across an oil painting, it would probably, you know, mess it up too. So,
Yeah.
Probably be harder to fix too.
yeah. And I do give care instructions. Normally, by the time I sell a piece, it's cured, so you don't have to worry about buffing it or anything. But if it's someone local and they're freaked out, it's like, I can, you know, let's meet up, bring your painting to Starbucks and I'll bring my nylons and I'll buff it up for you or something. So,
Great.
yeah. But anyway, so,
Good
Well, you-
customer service, I say.
yeah, that's for the local people that have purchased, not the ones I've had to ship from my website, but,
Uh-huh.
so.
Oh, that must be hard shipping.
Yeah, I mean, it's, yeah, because I prefer to ship like in the spring or the fall and not so much winter or summer. It's probably okay, but I tell people when it shows up, don't open it for like a day or so. let it get to room temperature before you open it and try to pull the painting out, just to let it set up. Because if it's winter and you pull it out and it's cold and you knock it on something, the wax could crack, if it's frozen, but
Oh, wait.
yeah, it can be tricky. So, but I had a piece go to France, and that was the furthest a piece went. They got there okay. So
Wow.
yeah, who knew?
World renowned.
Yeah, I can say international because I have one piece not in the U.S. So
Hey, that counts. That counts.
So yeah, I'll update my resume. International artist. So
Oh, that was fun.
Well,
Yes.
That was fun. You
Yeah.
made it a lot of fun too, Bob.
Yeah.
If you ever wanted to teach online or whatever, you've got the personality for it. You do a good job.
thanks, thank you. Yeah, I'm getting requests for that, for especially the realism pieces. You just don't see many realistic encaustic pieces. They tend to be more abstract and things like that. So people are always asking me how I paint so realistic, but and if I teach classes, but I don't know. Maybe someday. I got to retire first. Then
But
I'll
just
have more
keep
time.
having fun.
Yep. So,
Keep enjoying what you're doing.
well, thank you again for all the kind comments and remarks. And please check out the website, to see the others, or
Will
Well,
do.
follow me on Facebook or Instagram. On the website, there's links to my Instagram and Facebook page. So you can, I think that's how
Okay.
Debbie found me.
thank you.
Yeah, so,
all right.
so, yeah, appreciate that. Well, thank you
Oh,
again.
Okay.
Nothing else.
Thank you
All
very
right.
much.
All right.
Any last parting comments from anyone for Bob, or just can we
Thank
let him
you.
go and enjoy the rest
Yeah,
of the
you
evening?
can. Yeah, you can go. I really had a wonderful time.
Good. Thank you. Thank
Very
you very
good.
much, everyone.
And
Thanks,
this,
Bob.
this is
Bye.
being
All right,
recorded
take care.
and it
Good
will
night,
go out on our
everybody.
Facebook and YouTube. So
All right. Yep. We're out of here.
I'll let
Bye.
you know, Bob.
Yep. Sounds good. Thanks.
Okay.
Bye.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Right.
Yeah.